Hey, I've decided to do my life story on a video log because it's easier than typing, and considering I am a storyteller, singer, songwriter, and stand up comedian as well, it would probably do much better to tell my life story on video instead of writing it down. But in this case, only the names will be changed. Everything's true, but only the names will be changed. Or I say it's true. I mean, there might be some fiction in there. But anyway, I guess my earliest memory is, I remember standing up. I remember the first time I ever stood up on my feet. I was in the baby crib, like in the where you have the bars, where you know, in the crib with the big bars, so you can't roll out and fall out. I remember it well because my mom freaked out. I stood up. I think I stood up like one morning or early one morning or whenever. I was just like, I guess I was crying. Or I said, "Mommy, Mom," or I don't know if I could talk at that point. But anyway, I was crying. And I was like, "Hey, come get me!" And my mom came in there and she was like, "Oh my God, Gary!" She started calling my dad. Well, I didn't change his name there, but whatever. So I totally remember that. I remember the first time I got a real bed. I remember the man that brought it to the house, and I want to think I remember coming out of my mother. I want to think, and it's seriously not a suggested memory. I totally remember sleeping in my crib before I could stand up, which I assume maybe I tell a lot of people they're like that, and they're like, bullshit. Nobody can remember anything before they're 4. You don't remember anything. I've heard people say shit like that. But anyway, that was pretty sweet. And also another really early memory. I believe this was right around 1 year old, right when I first started about to walk. My grandmother would hold me in her arms, my dad's mother, and just in this rocking chair, and sing what I remember her singing. I just had my head against her chest, and I could just feel the vibrations, the warmth. It's the most comforting, it's the most safe and comforting and happy feeling I think I've ever had. They always instilled music in me, but I guess she was singing like church songs. She went to Church of Christ, so Church of Christy songs. Anyway, I remember climbing. Also remember in my early 20s, in my early to mid 20s, from about 20 to 25, I used to walk around so much. I'd walk miles, either through the fields behind our house, because there's like horse pastures and stuff, and there's a big creek down there that fed into Blackwater. I was so didn't know what to. Well, they used to have bluegrass festivals back there, and it was like $30 to get in. It was like It was like $30 for one day, or like 45 for 2 days, or 50 for 2 days, or some shit. And I never had any money. I didn't have a job, and I was just like into music. I was like, bluegrass was like a thing I'd heard growing up. I'd went to bluegrass pickings with my dad around campfires and stuff, and outside garages and whatnot. But so when I started hearing this music again, bluegrass is really underground. It's kind of like punk rock music. It really is. It's fast and it's technical. Some of it reminds me of like hardcore punk music, very much. because they got that double time beat, you know, like the and anyway, so I could hear the music, which was only about a mile away or two, and so I went climbing, walking through the fields, going through the forest, and you'd run into property lines where people's fences, and sometimes I'd have to jump fences and go through the woods, and I ended up going back down the holler to cross another creek, and down to the creek. And I remember just laying. I heard this. It was like a gospel type bluegrass band, and they had just beautiful vocals, and it was just really a lot of harmonies and just beautiful singing. And the sun was out. It was a perfect day, spring day. It was like late May, you know, and the water was just high enough in this little brook, this little creek, and flowing just enough. And I was really skinny back at that time. I got beer belly now, but we just I would lay down. I took all my clothes off and just laid down in the creek water, and I would float. So awesome. It was like just enough. Though I mean, the water wasn't deep at all, and I was so skinny. I mean, I would lay there and just kind of, I think like maybe fill my lungs with air, and just I'd be floating downstream, and it was sandy, like a sandy bottom and with little pebbles and sand. It felt so good on my skin, and I was just like, it was like weird heaven, and the sun was coming through the trees. That was like one time that if I could like put that scene in a movie or something, it would be so beautiful. It was so cool. And eventually I'd walk and walk and walk and just follow the sound of the music till I found this real, and then the bluegrass park was like right beside the Blackwater Creek. They call it a creek, but it's a river. I mean, if you can't jump over it, if you can't jump across it, it's a river. I mean, what's the width ratio here? I mean, it feeds into the Warrior, which is huge compared to Blackwater, but still, it's like Blackwater Creek. It's not quite big enough to be a river, but this ain't no creek. What creek? Break. So anyway, I'd get there where this high cliff was, right across the street, right across the creek from the Bluegrass Park, and the country club was on my side of the creek. But anyway, I'd stand up on that cliff and just like watch the people down on the dock on the other side and hanging out and swimming, and I was just like, where, you know, it was such a like discovery type thing, you know. It was like bluegrass. It was like punk. It was like a country punk rock to me, in a way. But anyway, part 2 to be continued.